Welcome in to the newest episode of the Hoth Hangout podcast. Glad to have all of you here with us, joining us for episode 71 of the Hoth Hangout podcast. Hope you're having a wonderful day. Joey and I yesterday, well, I guess today actually,
Yep.
considering it was 2 in the morning, just we watched what, maybe 16, 17 hours ago at this point, we watched the fourth episode of season 3 of the Bad Batch. So we're going to be diving in a little bit further into our review and sort of synopsis of the episode in today's podcast. Looking forward to that very much as we continue on with our watch through of season 3 of the Bad Batch. As a reminder, if you're not yet subscribed to the Hoth Hangout YouTube channel, check us out over there for the video version of every podcast, as well as our reactions to the newest Star Wars shows. Just like our reaction that went out about 16, 17 hours ago at the timing of this recording of our reaction to episode 4 of the third season of the Bad Batch. Once again, that's available over on YouTube if you want to check it out on the Hoth Hangout channel. You can contact us via email at hothhangout@gmail.com. Shoot us your Star Wars related questions, and we'd love to showcase them here on the podcast and talk about them as well. Additionally, the Hoth Hangout podcast is findable wherever you get your pods, including Spotify and Apple. And if you're listening on those platforms or any platform where you're able to leave a review, leave a 5-star review on the podcast. We would appreciate it very much. And it does allow the podcast to be more easily discovered by other people and share our love of Star Wars with them as well. You can find us on the socials, whether it be Instagram, TikTok, or X. We are findable at Hoth Hangout on all of those. Additionally, the Discord server is getting even closer to being done. I think we're going to be doing some last steps fine tuning here in the next few days. So hopefully, a week's time from now, we will be able to officially announce the reveal of our community Hoth Hangout Discord server, where people will be able to hang out and chat about shows like The Bad Batch and many others, as well as just Star Wars in general. So be on the lookout for that coming in about a week's time. The question we would love to pose to all of you as our teaser question of the day is simply: will the Bad Batch go back to Mount Tantus to free the other clones in the rest of season 3? That's something Joey and I imagine, will probably touch on in today's episode as well. And speaking of Joey, what's going on, man? How are you? I like the Force is Strong in my family
Yes.
shirt you're rocking today.
Yeah, it's been a long time since we've talked, Ben. So I've missed you. Hope everything's been going well in your world.
Mhm.
But yeah, the newest episode. I mean, we love the Star Wars. We'll see how we both kind of feel about it. Upcoming here. But it's more Star Wars. We love to talk about it. Can't wait for more. I think I'm more excited to what's to come than maybe what we saw. A little spoiler alert of how I felt about the episode, but I think it's going to be a fun topic. I think we get under an hour this one, Ben. I think we could do it this time.
That's our goal. I sent a message to Joey and Gibbo after last week's episode because we went over an hour last week. And to be fair, we were covering 3 episodes instead of one. And so I said, for all the upcoming future episodes, our goal is to get under an hour, considering we're only covering one episode. It's a one episode review in each of the podcast episodes from here on out in the next few weeks. So that's the goal. We're gonna make it happen. I'm calling it less than 50 minutes today.
Oh,
Just
that's quite a bit.
we'll see. I think we can make it happen.
Yeah, sure.
Again, we just got the one episode to talk about today, so knowing me, I'll probably go on a tangent and we'll finish like at 58 and a half or something like that. But yeah, it's gonna be a fun one. Excited to talk some Bad Batch season 3, episode 4. But before we start talking Bad Batch, we had a couple pieces of news related to Star Wars that came out in the past few days. The first of which concerns one of the, for me personally, and for I imagine a lot of people as well, most exciting upcoming releases in the Star Wars universe in the Acolytes. This show has been kind of been thrown around potential release dates for the seems like the past year, and now, while this is not an officially confirmed Disney date, there is wide speculation that the release date for the Acolyte has tentatively been scheduled for June 5th. That is this year, 2024. And when Disney was reached for comment on this by Collider.com, who I believe broke this information, um, Disney did not confirm nor deny this report. So while this is not an official press release on behalf of Disney that June 5th will be the release date, this is seeming like a legit report, and it's somewhat likely, I would say, that this ends up being the actual release date for the show, which is what I'm really looking forward to. Again, I don't know, Joey. Have you heard any other information about the Acolyte other than kind of potential release dates in the past few weeks?
Oh, this is the first time that I've heard anything about an actual date. Like you said, it's been thrown around the past year, I guess, of when this was supposed to release, and this is the first time we had a solid, like, actual June 5th, release date. So hopefully this comes to fruition. It would be really great to finish up Bad Batch in beginning of May, only to wait a month and roll right into Acolyte. Or we can get maybe Tales of the Jedi in May 4th,
Ooh,
something like that. Just so we could roll right into the next show, into the next show. So I'm hoping, it would be. I mean, I took a look at the calendar. That is a Wednesday, so kind of it fits the same schedule as we have here in the Bad Batch. Hopefully, it'll go back to the 8 p.m. Central release time for
I'm
us,
hoping.
so we don't have to do the 2 a.m. Wake up calls anymore. But yeah, I'm excited for this. I read a little bit about it in the article here, and who know, we like to cover things that may not be fully true, because these are the types of things that hit the internet and everybody like goes crazy over them. So sure, we could jump in there too and have a little excitement, even if it's wrong. It's exciting for the time.
Yeah, yeah, I'm certainly excited. I love the timeline too because, like you mentioned, with the Bad Batch ending in May, maybe Tales of the Jedi we get between Bad Batch and Acolyte. But I like the fact we're so spoiled as Star Wars fans now because there's
Yep.
so minimal time between shows. Like I know you and I were like, oh, this is so long between Ahsoka and Bad Batch, but in reality, it was what, like, just over 2 months, which
Probably.
yeah. Like, we didn't get any Star Wars from, like, 1983 to 1999, and then we
Yeah,
didn't get any Star Wars again from 2005 to 2013, so it's like, we're definitely a little bit spoiled in that regard as Star Wars fans, so,
I'll admit it.
um, yeah, yeah, but it's cool to know that, the timeline for this seems like it's in the very near future and potentially, as soon as just, like, 3 months away, which is awesome to hear in that regard. Really looking forward to this show personally. Yeah, I'm very excited about this one. The other piece of news we wanted to cover this week before we hop into some of our viewer comments concerning the Bad Batch. This piece of news actually concerns a Star Wars FPS game that was being developed by EA that was canceled, which also coincided with a bunch of layoffs from the company. It's also my understanding that this is not a cancellation of the next Jedi game in the Fallen Order and Survivor series, but this was a game I think being developed under the Mandalorian franchise piece of Star Wars, where it was the protagonist of the game would have been a Mandalorian, and so that game, it now seems, is off the shelf and no longer being developed by EA, but without interruption, or hopefully without interruption to the next game in the Jedi franchise. Which, by the way, have they announced the name of the third title after Jedi Survivor?
I don't think so. I think the only news that we even ever saw was when Cameron was at one of the cons, and he had spilled the beans a little bit about him working on a video game, that being the next Jedi, the next installation of the Jedi series. So I don't think there's been a name quite yet. In fact, I hope not, because we still have to finish the game. So give us like another year, and maybe we can finish
Yeah,
it, and then you can announce everything.
they're waiting on us on the Hot Hangout channel to finish our playthrough of Jedi Survivor before they announce the third game. We'll get on it. We'll get on it. But hey, in all seriousness, I think we may or may not do something next month when the original Battlefront 2 and Battlefront games drop. Uh, may or may not be doing a live
I'm
stream or something to that effect.
Yeah, we check the Discord when it comes out, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, there you go. But yeah, cool news in the realm of gaming. Well, not so cool in that the game was canceled, but um, I guess good to know that the Jedi
Yeah.
series is still being
I'll
developed. And
I'll be honest, I didn't even know that there was an FPS game being developed at EA at this point.
I didn't know it was FPS. I knew that there was a Mandalorian game being
Mm.
developed, but I didn't know that it was a first person shooter. So, um, yeah, that was kind of news to me. I had heard sort of rumors about the Mandalorian game, but looks like we may have to wait years and years for that to actually happen if it ever does happen. So, I'm also sad to hear that I think it was what, like 600 employees or
Yeah.
something being laid off from EA with this as well. So
I
that's
feel
kind
like
of the biggest downside of
I
this, I
feel like
would
there's
say.
been a lot of that going around in the gaming industry, unfortunately, where
Yeah.
a very large percent, a large number, I'm not sure exactly as far as percentages, but large number, 600 and, 600 to 700 there at EA. I think there was a 900 employee one at Epic not too long
Mm,
ago. So just to hear that, you definitely, your heart goes out to them, but hopefully the people in those development areas are able to find jobs somewhere else.
yeah. Yeah, definitely. Well, yeah, still lots to be excited in the world of Star Wars video games. Lots of fun stuff coming up. And having gone through those pieces of news this week, before we talk about Bad Batch, the very last thing we wanted to touch on from last week's podcast was a comment from viewer Aunt Vasuvi, longtime off Hangout podcast listener. Aunt Vasuvi says, thanks to Ben, Joey, and Gibbo. Isn't it interesting that Julian Dennison voiced Deke and Stack while Daniel Logan only voiced Mox? The slight age difference is the only reason I can think of. To my ear, they all sounded the same. I was thrilled to learn of this casting rumor 2 days ago. And I believe Daniel Logan, if I'm correct in this, I think that's the actor who played Boba Fett
That is
in the
correct.
prequel series.
Yes, that
Yeah,
is
so
correct.
that's cool. They brought him back to voice one of the young clones in the second episode of the third season of the Bad Batch. That was nicely done on the part of the Star Wars Star Wars people behind the scenes. Amasuvi also went on to say, I first noticed Golden Globe winner Angela Bassett in 1985, who Joey, you and I talked about a little bit last week. But she really hit it big with What's Love Got to Do with It in 93, where she nailed the role of one of Amasuvi's favorite Buddhists, the late Tina Turner. I recommend it if you appreciate biographies, dramas, or music. I also saw her in an airport once. She's staggeringly gorgeous, even without makeup. Since Joey mentioned Snoke in the Kylo Ren comics, he's wearing a space do-rag.
That's what it was. That's what it was.
I don't even know what is this reference? A space
Yeah,
do-rag?
yeah. It's just like something that you could wear around your head, essentially.
Yeah, but what makes
To
it a space do-rag?
well, I think she was being, she was
Oh.
putting it, the space version of the do rag. I think is basically
Yeah,
the idea of it. So I think yeah, that's what it was. I could not remember what kind of headwear he was wearing, but yeah, it was kind of like a turban esque type of headwear there.
interesting. By the way, have you seen What's Love Got to Do with It?
It's been very long, but yes, I have seen that as well.
See, this is one that I haven't seen. Again, my Angela Bassett knowledge is so current pop
Hmm.
culture, and I feel like I haven't seen anything of her old stuff. So, like, my version of Angela Bassett, once again, is American Horror Story and
Hmm.
not What's Love Got to Do with It, or probably any of the stuff that 99% of people know her for. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah. Anyways, shout out to Amasuvi. Thank you for the comment. As always, we appreciate you so very much. Also had a couple polls we asked on last week's episode. Simply, did you enjoy the 3 episode premiere of The Bad Batch? Overwhelmingly positive yeses over on X, with 100% of the vote going towards yes. And then over on the YouTube community tab, we asked the same question. A little bit more of a, I wouldn't exactly say even vote, but I guess more so than the X outcome, with 76% of people saying they did enjoy it, 24% of people saying that they did not. So,
Hmm.
not all peaches and cream from
I was
everyone. And
so remember the week before we had flip flopped. I was trying to
uh-huh,
give us a like a lob. I was just like
that's true.
everybody's got to enjoy this one, right? And still, we found some people that maybe not fully fans of the Bad Batch season premiere.
Well, ironically, last week too, I think we said the people on X were more negative or pessimistic
Right.
in their responses. And it's funny because this week they're like, "You think we're pessimists? We are voting 100% on yes, we did
Yeah.
like it." Yeah. So it seems like the YouTube folks were the ones that had more of an issue with the premiere. So um, if you didn't manage to catch last week's episode, that's what Joey and I talked about was our thoughts on episodes 1, 2, and 3 of the season 3 premiere of The Bad Batch. If you're interested in checking that out, that is available to listen and watch as well. And then be on the lookout this week for another poll coming in regards to the this week's question. It'll be available on X as well as on the YouTube community tab if you'd like to cast your vote and have your voice heard in the community question that we ask every week here on the Hoth Hangout channel. All right, Joey, the time has come. The discussion of Bad Batch season 3, episode 4. You and I watched it together just like literally today. We're recording this now at like 10:30 at night. We were together at 2 a.m. this morning watching the episode, which seems like 3 days ago in my brain right now. It's been that kind of day. But um, I guess real briefly before we get into any of the details of the episode, what were your overall thoughts going into it, or did you have any expectations, or perhaps was there something about the episode that you really ended up enjoying?
I think going into the episode, if you remember last week, I was happy that both Omega and Crosshair were, they made their way off of Mount Tantus. So I think that
Mhm.
was a big thing that I wanted to see because I didn't want that to drag on as long, possibly as long as it could. What I really wanted from this one was, okay, we've seen seasons, we've seen episodes where the crew is not together. Let's get them back together here. It's time. We have limited time here this last season. So those were my that was my expectation, is to get to that point. And and spoiler alert, we actually get to that point. So it fulfilled it filled the checkbox that I needed for this episode.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, I guess I hadn't thought about it that much, but I would say I was pleasantly surprised that we didn't spend like 3 episodes trying to get the gang back together after they escaped from Mount Tantus. I mean, I guess a little bit of a spoiler alert if you haven't seen episode 4, but I would assume if you're listening to this episode, you've probably seen episode 4 at this point, or I would hope at least. The reuniting at the end of the episode was something that I guess I didn't necessarily expect it that as fast as it did. But like you said, I think it's a great thing, and it kind of checks off that box of okay, we're not going to waste time like getting them back together. Now they are back together, so we can
Right.
just kind of keep going with the plot. It feels like.
Exactly. Yeah.
Um, yeah, yeah. And I guess, like you mentioned, um, in terms of, keeping going with the plot and where we're headed now. Well, actually, let me ask you a question first, and this is a little bit of a maybe a reveal of one of the questions we had closer to the end. I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, I will say, because the end of the episode was such an emotional moment. Like you and I watching that, we're like, "Wow, this is like really meaningful."
Yeah.
And I guess it's kind of like, where does that leave us with
Right.
this group? Um, you know, where is? I mean, we assume Echo is off with Rex right now somewhere. We don't know exactly, not exactly sure where. But now that it's Crosshair, Omega, Wrecker, and Hunter together, maybe Tech again in the future if he's not dead. Who knows?
The
Um,
return, by the way.
the Return. Is that the name of an episode title,
Yeah,
by the
yeah, it
way?
is. Yeah, it is. Yeah.
I think we talked about that a
Yeah, we
couple weeks ago,
did.
didn't
Yeah.
we? Is that a Tech's Return? I don't know. But anyways, like, what is the dynamic going to be like with this crew moving
Right.
forward? So you kind of got a taste of the fact that it's going to be a little rough the first moments of episode 5, I would assume, with Crosshair coming back into the fold after helping Omega escape, and Hunter and Wrecker probably being like, "Nah, dude, we got to earn your trust back, or
Yeah.
you got to earn our trust back rather." So the end of the episode was great in and of itself. Um, I guess just to briefly move our way through the episode, and then we can kind of talk about some of these bigger questions. Um, the episode starts off after the escape from Tantus with Gotcha, which I've been asked to ask you. Well, I wasn't asked to ask you, but someone else asked me, so I figured I would ask you.
Okay.
How do you pronounce the creature that Omega helps escape from Mount Tantus? Is it
Then
Batch? Is it Batcher or Betcha?
I think it's Batcher. I think that's the actual. That's kind of what I assumed, but now that you mention it, I'm not quite sure.
I had someone come up to me today earlier this evening, and they were like, "Did you watch the episode yet?" I was like, "Yeah," and they're like, "Is it Batcher or Betcha?"
I bet you.
I was like, "I'll ask that on the podcast to Joey."
That should have been the poll question.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Omega and Crosshair, they crash land with Batcher Betcha on this planet called Lao, which I don't know if we've ever seen this at any point in Star Wars. I want to say we haven't, judging from how sparse the Wikipedia page about this planet was. But Batcher's completely fine after the landing. I think it was you who noted during our live watch through. You were like, "Oh no, is Batcher okay?" And he just climbs right out. He's like, "Oh, okay, that's good." Uh, they go through this process of needing to get chain codes, which they don't have. And then there's this cute little scene where Omega is like asking if they can just bribe their way, and
Yeah.
the person or the droid, I'm not even really sure, working at the station is like, yeah, I can do a bribe. That'll be
Yeah.
30,000 credits. And you're like, what? That is so much. So the game that Omega had done in the previous season, um, is kind of in Sid's little hideout place is the way that they end up going about making these credits up in order to try to bribe their way onto a ship, which ironically doesn't even, they didn't even need to do it in the end of the episode, I guess,
Right, of course.
if you want to think about it that way. But we are introduced to a new character in this episode, which is what I wanted to ask you about. This Imperial officer whose name I don't even recall. I'm sure he did say it at one point in the episode.
Hmm.
I want to say he was a captain. That does sound familiar to me. Maybe I can look it up here while we're podcasting. But um, this Imperial officer who's a very off-putting. I found him kind of like repulsive in a way.
Yeah, yeah.
uh, Initially, he was, you know, a good sport, quote unquote, but then he's also asking for these like taxes and stealing
Fees.
Omega's, yeah, fees, and stealing Omega's pet whatever species Batcher is, and so kind of just a weird guy. What'd you think about his character?
Yeah, off-putting is probably the best, adjective for him because I don't know. He didn't even really fit the Empire mold to me. He was just kind of like a sleaze, you know. So he was like if Jabba the Hutt was an Imperial officer. That's kind of how I felt about him. I don't know. He just didn't. You know what I mean? Like he just didn't
Yeah,
seem. You know
that's
how
a good
like
description.
normally like the officers are really still kind of uptight and very, proper and all that. But I don't know. He just kind of the way he had the credit. He would like kind of play with it in his hand, just like little things like that. Just didn't make him seem very officer like. Like he he reminded me of just the the officer that just takes advantage of the situation of of being part of the empire and just taking money. I mean exactly the role that he did, right? So I think that was on purpose, obviously, that he was not going to be someone that you were going to like.
Mm.
But can we talk for a second real quick about the outfits that both Omega and Crosshair had on? We got a couple of them in the video version of podcast here. It's just it's like a hoodie with a mask for a Crosshair. What do you think of that? I mean, I thought it looked cool. I automatically went to, ooh, this would be like a cool figure to have. So that was where my thoughts went.
Yeah, I thought it looked really cool, especially Crosshair. It reminds me of something almost dystopian. Like I know Dune 2 is coming out this
Yeah,
weekend,
right.
and I'm like, man, he looks like he walked right off the set of Dune 2, like he's some
Nice.
other like species that has some sort of breathing apparatus necessary to wear around his head. The ball cap does look really like, is that you, Crosshair? Is this Star Wars? Like
Yeah, it is a
you
ball cap. That's why it looked kind of funny. It literally looks like a knitted like baseball cap.
yeah, yeah, kind of interesting looking. By the way, the captain is Captain Man. Also learned
Captain
that
Man.
yeah, Mann, but yeah, Captain Man. And I also learned the creature that eats him at the end of the episode is a Rathtar, which is, I believe, the same thing in
Ah,
episode 7.
yes. What they're
With
transporting.
right, yeah.
Yeah, that was the
So
second Rathar, I think, in the past 2 or 3 weeks that we've talked about it.
yeah, Rathtar is making a frequent appearance on the podcast recently. Oh, by the way, during Omega's scene with Captain Man, when they're playing whatever the name of that game is, it's not Sabak, it's a different game.
Mm.
I need to educate myself on Star Wars
Trivia?
game. Yeah, that too. But Star Wars gaming and entertainment and Star Wars gambling in the universe, and because whatever game they're playing, it was some system of like alleys on cards that were like 2 and 4 and 5. And so Omega and Captain Man are playing later on in the episode, and um he plays something and is like, "I'm so good." And Omega's like, "You think you're good?" And then just lays down 3 cards that are like orange, purple, and blue, and then the droid at the bar is like, "Oh my gosh, the rising suns," or something. I don't remember what the droid said. And I was like, What? What are the rules of this game?"
You just have those and you win?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I made the comment. Oh, well, that's what I was gonna say. I made the comment to you during our live watch through that it's like playing Exodia, which if anyone has played Yu-Gi-Oh out there, there's these 5 cards, Joey, that if you get all of them in your hand, you just win the game. So I was so I
Nice.
was like, "Oh, that's what happened here."
Nice.
Yeah. But yeah, the Captain Man gets a little salty that Omega wins using her secret exploit orange, purple, blue card combo, and steals Batcher outside. And in order to find out where Batcher is gone, well, first of all, Crosshair's like, we gotta just leave this animal Omega,
Yeah, that's right.
which is another important moment. At this point, Crosshair's conscience is speaking pretty loudly, but this is just another emphatic moment where it's really an important. It's a part of the episode that doesn't seem like it's important, but when you think about the context of Omega and Crosshair's relationship, I think it really is because it really solidifies the fact that Crosshair is changing more and more to being this less cold and ruthless person, but
Mhm.
someone who's empathetic to kind of the way that Omega is, and not only empathetic to Omega, but being more understanding of pursuing the route that involves, maybe not doing the safest thing, but doing the right thing.
Right. And it should
Yeah,
be we should mention that she also did wanna go back to Montantis by this time to go
right.
rescue the rest of the other clones.
Right. Yeah. She's like saying these things like, we're going to rescue the clones. We need to rescue Batcher. Crosshair's like, can we just be safe? Like, why do we have to
Yeah,
go back and do all this other stuff?
right.
But that's the importance of Omega's character is she is so good natured that is kind of the driving force of the show in many ways. And so, as insignificant as it might seem, an Imperial officer stealing this, you know, pet of Omega's, it's another just re-emphasizing moment that this is the right thing to do, and we're going to do the right thing rather than the easy thing and leave. So they go in order to retrieve Thatcher after bribing, like the boy on the side of the road for
Yeah.
5,000 credits, which you called exactly, by the way.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
Yeah,
but it was too perfect of a number. Like, oh, we have 35,000 credits. I'm like, yep, you're gonna lose 5,000 pretty fast.
right.
I know how.
Yeah, yeah. The chain codes or the tickets cost 30,000. They've got 5,000 extra. Oh no.
Exactly,
Yeah,
Grips.
yeah. Um, and so inevitably they go back to retrieve Batcher. They're caught in the process. Omega has this kind of cute line where after she tosses the credits, which when I watched it with you, I was like, why wouldn't you just keep holding on to them if you're just gonna run?
Right.
But she looks at Crosshair. She's like, all right, we're doing things your way now.
Yeah,
And that's when the
that was
firefight
my favorite
starts.
line.
Yeah. The animals are unleashed, which those little running things, which I couldn't remember if they were from Phantom Menace or just Jurassic Park, and I was melding those memories together in my mind. Um, and so, they go on. Captain Man, as we said before, actually, here there's a picture of it is on the screen if you're watching the video version of the podcast. Is being eaten by this Rathtar that's escaped its cage. Kind of a fitting ending to his character who survived a whole 18 minutes of Star Wars animated um Star Wars animation. That might be a record for shortest lived character in the Star Wars universe, but he's eaten by the Rathtar. They go on to steal the ship, which is being tracked by the Empire. And there's a scene right before the very final scene of the episode where Hemlock is being shown approached by a commando trooper, I believe, and saying that they are, sending the operatives after them because they're tracking the ship that Omega and Hunter, or excuse me, Omega and Crosshair stole along with Batcher. And then this is my favorite part of the episode personally was the last minute and a half to 2 minutes where they reunite with Hunter and Wrecker, both Omega and Crosshair. First, Omega, this sentimental moment. She gives them both hugs and she's crying. She hasn't seen them in half a year, basically. It's a really, really special moment that they've been searching for her. She's been searching for them. They finally find one another. They're like, how'd you escape? Off the ship walks Crosshair, and you can just see Wrecker and Hunter immediately both go, oh,
Like, oh,
now,
we don't like this at all.
yeah, now what? Which ties back to what I asked you, I think, just maybe 10 or 15 minutes ago in the podcast about kind of what the dynamic of this group is going to be. Like, are we going to spend a good portion of the next episode sort of doing like group therapy with the Bad Batch of kind of like working,
Right.
working our stuff out that's happened in the past so that we can just move forward? Um, it'll be kind of interesting to see how we go about
Yeah.
that, or and maybe will there even be any difficulties in the process of the upcoming missions because of differences of opinions?
Right. I think what happens is that they get thrown into something right away where they
Mhm.
have to depend on each other, kind of have to go back to what they were used to before, they got split up and everything like that. So, I think that's the way that they will have to kind of mend that bridge. So, when you said earlier, how do we earn your trust? How do you, how can we trust you again? I mean, that's going to be the best way to do it. They're going to have to be, a quick battle. Maybe this is where we bring in Asajj. Maybe this is where we bring in Cad Bane. I think they need to have, a equal, the same enemy to fight against, just like the old days. So if they can get to that point, which I think that's what that's what I feel like this next episode will be, is getting back to Clone Force 99. Getting back
Mm,
to what they were, before Omega, and now what they will become, with Omega.
yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good point. I wouldn't even be surprised if there's a moment in the next episode where either Wrecker or Hunter is in a life or death situation, is not going to make it, and then Crosshair saves
Right.
both or one of them. Um, Maybe that happens on Mount Tantus. I mean, next week's episode is the one that's called The Return, which again is that it's probably the return to Mount Tantus, but it
Right.
could also be the return of other stuff too.
Right.
Tech.
Tech, the
No,
Emperor.
the Emperor
The Emperor is
somehow.
yeah, the Emperor's back, even though he hasn't left, but he's here.
Yes. But yeah, you're exactly right. I think we're gonna see some quarreling amongst them, kind of figuring out how to be a group again. Ultimately, there's a decision that's faced. Hunter or Wrecker gets in a sticky situation, or maybe even Omega, and Crosshair is the one that is responsible for saving them from whatever situation might come about in the next episode. So
Right.
um, I think that's a pretty likely route moving forward for what episode 5 has in store. And then after that, we get episodes 6 and 7 both in 1 week. So I don't know if we'll get any bounty hunters or operatives. I guess we don't know for sure that they're bounty hunters yet. I think we can probably assume that they
Because
are.
that was Hemlock that referred to them as operatives, right?
Right, right. Um, so I would assume we'll see them probably, I mean, more than likely in episode 6 and 7. I
Mm-hmm.
hope we get a glimpse of them in the next episode too.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm so excited to see Asajj that it's killing me a little bit that I just have to wait like at least another week, probably 2 more weeks to see her in this show. But do you have any ideas? I mean, I know we've thrown around the name Asajj a lot for kind of mainly because we've seen her in the trailer for the season 3 trailer of Bad Batch, but who these other operatives might be. I know we tossed around the name Cad Bane as well at one point too.
Right. I think the whole that whole guild, that what was that, the bounty hunters guild or whoever it was, with Boba Fett and Embo, and I think who else, who's the Trandoshians, um
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. I'll think of it.
yeah, yeah, so like all of them, I think all of them are gonna Bosk.
Osk, yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that all of them are in play here. I mean, that's where you first saw all of these, these bounty hunters, was in, what was it? Was it in Empire that we first saw the Boba Fett?
Yes. Yeah, I
Yeah,
believe
yeah.
so.
So
Yep.
yeah, I mean, around this time, and a little bit before it, whatever. So yeah, I think this would be a great introduction to all of that. Now it's making me think of the game that is, we're not going to see that Bounty Hunter Mandalorian game now. That's sad, but to this would be a great opportunity to have that, and then the Cad Bane, obviously, So and Fennec Shand, don't forget, we do see Fennec at some point here, where she kind of plays in. I think before we saw her, was she more like on the Nala Se side of things? She was
Yes.
trying to find Omega for Nala Se, as opposed to the Empire here. So,
And
um,
Cad Bane was working for Lama Su, I'm pretty sure.
see.
Yeah.
So, like, how does she come into it? I love me some Fennec Shan, so I'm excited to see her back in it. And yeah, so those operatives, I would think that this is who we're talking about.
Yeah. It'll be exciting to, see them. I just anytime we get bounty hunter stuff, I personally like that a lot.
Sure.
Oh, by the way, I wanted to correct something I said like 2 minutes ago. So you said, I'm only saying this, saying this half in jest because technically it's true, but yes, Empire is the first time we saw Boba Fett in like mainstream live action Star Wars. But you and I watched his first appearance in the Star Wars Holiday
Oh,
Special,
that's yeah, that's right.
which came out 2 years prior to Empire.
And was very good, actually. That little
Yeah,
that little animated series was the highlight of that holidays.
yep. Of that hour-long movie, those 5 minutes were, I think I can comfortably say, the only good part.
Was that only an hour?
Something like that, yeah.
It felt like 3 days.
Yeah. Consistently, one of the videos that, like, continues to get views on our YouTube channel, will be like, "Oh, like, how have some of our recent things done?" They've done, like this, they've done like that, and then I'm like, "That's weird. The Star Wars Holiday Special reaction video is still getting views
Yeah.
from, like, a year and a half ago
Maybe
or
maybe we
something
should
like
just
that."
keep pushing that video out for everybody to watch
Yeah.
and to laugh at.
Yeah. By the way, if anyone's listening to this and you've never seen that movie, do yourself a favor as a Star Wars fan. It's one of those things you just kind of have to watch and get through it just to say you've seen it. There is a really great 5-minute segment where Boba Fett is introduced for the first time. Other than that, you're going to be cringing for almost an hour, but uh, it's
What do
like
you
a rite of
mean? You
passage.
didn't like all the musical numbers in the middle of our Star Wars?
It's just all over the place. But how did this episode turn into a Star Wars holiday special rant? I don't know, but yeah, so anyways, hopefully we'll see some bounty hunters, if not next week, then in 2 weeks on March 13th when we get both episodes 6 and 7 in the same week. Real quickly before we talk about our favorite parts of the episode and ranking the episode, when we look at next week's episode, episode 5, I know we mentioned it's called The Return. Yes or no? Does that mean something more than just returning to Mount Tantus, or is that all it means in
I
your
think
hypothesis?
I think that's all it means. I think it's just a return to Montantus to get to free as many clones as possible.
Okay,
What about you?
I would lean that direction as well, but I'm still holding out hope that Tech is somewhere and we're gonna find
I
him
mean, it
next
would it
week's
would
episode.
be. I mean, I say that with, like, that's the realistic view of me,
Yeah,
of it. But yeah, there's no one ever really says bye in in Star Wars, or no one's ever really gone. That's what the line is. No one's
there you go.
ever really gone. So we know who's gone right now, and the episode is called The Return. So obviously we are all holding hope that Tech makes a return.
myself included.
Uh,
I really want to see him come back, but who knows? Will it happen? We'll find out. I would venture to say that he is gone, but we will find out, I guess. I've already talked a little bit about my favorite part of this episode, and if you have the same favorite part, I think that's totally fair because I think that it was a great part of the episode. I mentioned the ending, kind of the reuniting with Hunter and Wrecker, just the emotional moment with Omega, but also kind of capped off with this moment of uncomfortability with the reuniting of Crosshair and the other two again. And then Omega kind of sitting there almost in the middle, like, what did I
now,
just
yeah,
yeah.
right.
So I mean, that reuniting, that moment, that feeling of how that just played out, and the cinematography of it too. You mentioned it in our live watch through. There's a wide shot where, uh, Crosshair's on one side, the far side, and the other 3 are on the other far side. At this point, Omega's already walked over. Maybe even a little bit of symbolism there, like, he's gonna have to, like,
Sure.
make the trek over to the other side to meet them where they're at and kind of cross the bridge in a way.
Right.
Uh, but yeah, I loved that end scene. That was definitely my favorite part of the episode. Did you have a favorite part, or was yours similarly the same?
No, when Captain Man got eaten. No, I'm just kidding. You mentioned that that was like one of the more darker images that we've seen in animated
Yeah,
series for
yeah.
sure. So there's that. No, I would agree. The ending, the reunion. I'm glad I was wearing glasses yesterday or this morning when we were watching it because I was absolutely fighting back tears because I'm like, oh my god, I can't take this, because the the older brother in Wrecker finally gets to reunite with his younger sister. The father figure in Hunter, finally gets reunited with his daughter, and just to have that moment finally get there, after what is it they said, like, a half a year or whatever it is.
Mhm.
Because I think that's what hit me most the first couple episode is the realization of how long they were apart and how long Wrecker and Hunter were looking for her. And on both sides, really not knowing if Omega had been alive, whether Wrecker and Hunter had been alive. I mean, even as early, as recently as this episode, the Crosshair was questioning that. Like, we don't know. We don't know if they're still out there. And but then, Omega, being the optimistic light that she is able to say, no, 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 they're out there. We're gonna, I sent the coded message. They're gonna be there. So to kind of have all of that suspense and just kind of waiting for that moment to finally come, it totally paid off at this. The beautiful and I mentioned also the music. The music at the end of that scene was beautiful, and just how it was, and how it all culminated into this beautiful moment. And then right afterwards, they're like, "Oh, there's there's Crosshair. Now what do we do?" So just that whole, like you said, a minute and a half, 2 minutes to end the episode is absolutely my favorite too.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a moment that's hard to beat as a favorite part of the episode, but I guess that also begs the question, if any of you have a moment that you liked more than that moment or that you
Hmm.
thought was your favorite part of the episode, feel free to let us know, either in the comments of the video version of the podcast or on any of the socials or via email as well. We'd love to hear from you in that regard. So having said that, I think I gave the episode right after we watched it. I think I said 8 out of 10 was my immediate grade. I think I would probably maybe elevate it to an 8.5. And I feel a little bit guilty even giving it something that low because it wasn't something that had an episode that really had any glaring issues with it. I
Right.
think it was just a necessary episode to get the crew back together. And I think they did it in a way that was really great. They did it in a way that, involved a despicable character who met his demise in the end, which is kind
Yeah.
of, as a fan of not just Star Wars, but kind of just movies in general, there's always like a little part of you that relishes when the evil character like kind of gets what's coming to him at the end
Right.
of the episode or the end of the movie. So in that regard, it was kind of fun as well. I'll elevate it to an 8.5 for me because I think it did a lot well, and I appreciate that it did it promptly, like you mentioned
Yeah.
at the top of the podcast, that this wasn't like something that dragged out over 3 episodes of trying to get everyone back together. that it happened in one episode. It did it in a good way. It did it succinctly and meaningfully, most of all,
Right.
especially with the end of the episode capped off. So I'll elevate to an 8.5. What about you?
I think I'm gonna stick with the 8 that I gave it originally, mainly because, and I mentioned this in the when we were watching it, it kind of gave the vibes of a side quest, just because,
Yeah,
and although it was a very necessary story that had to happen, we needed to get to the point where they reunited. Just the way they got to it, I felt kind of like, like it wasn't
yeah,
like super meaningful. I mean, although it was great to kind of see the one guy you didn't like, meet his demise, but then just like, well, then what was he there in the first place? You know what I mean? So
right. Yeah,
there was nothing, you know, um, there was nothing gained by his character being there. He, yeah, sure, maybe he told Hemlock, but was that really the only thing? I don't know. I felt it was a little bit light on that part of it, but it, obviously with the ending and how it was shot, how it was, scored and everything like that, that was obviously my favorite part of it. But just the way to get there, I mean, we could have done, I feel like we could have done that in, well, what did we say? It was a 28-minute episode. We could probably have done that in 15 to 20 minutes, if we didn't have to
yeah,
go through, all right, well, now we have to get there. Oh wait, now we got to bribe this dude. Oh wait, now we got to go get coins to bribe this. You know what I mean? So it was very much
right.
video gamey, and where I just feel like we've seen this type of thing before. And it might be because I've been scarred by so many of those Sid side missions that we've seen.
That's what I was gonna
You
say.
know, so I think that's probably, it just gave me those feels again. I'm like, I don't want that. I don't want that. And so it took a little bit away from the episode for me. But like we said, as long as we got to the point where we did, I think that's all that matters. And so I'm not giving it like a 5 or anything like that, but I'll give it an 8.
Nice. Yeah, yeah. I think that's totally fair. Like you said, a lot of it did sort of feel that like necessary episode where, oh, we need the money. Where do we get the money? We don't have the money. We have to make the money to get the money. Then we lose the money, and then.
Yeah, right.
So I
And
totally
yeah,
get that.
and then to top it all off, did they not even bring the credits with them? Like they just lost
Yeah,
it on, yeah. It's,
yeah, yeah.
so
They
if
could have
if
just stolen the ship in the first place,
That's what
but
I'm saying. So if they would have at least gotten away with the money too, I'd be like, all right, well, at least they got 30,000 credits out of it, and that's gonna help
yeah.
them along the way. But no,
I mean, that's a good point too. Like the whole episode is like Omega's saying we need to do things the right way. We're not going to steal the ship. We're going to get the credits. And then by the end of the episode, she's out of options and she's like, "Well, let's steal the ship."
and then Crosser's like, finally, this is what I've
Yeah,
been saying.
we should have done this 20 minutes ago, Omega. But yeah, it was a pretty good episode and, probably amongst the four so far, I, I don't know. I definitely liked I think episodes 1 and 3 especially a little bit more. But all that being said, good episode.
Mhm.
Hopefully next week is even better. Like we said, the name of the episode next week is The Return. And having said that as the name of the episode, our question that we would love to pose to all of you, which we teased at the top of the episode, is will the Bad Batch go back to Mount Tantus to free the other clones? I would think it's pretty likely having the name of the episode next week be The Return, but we'll find out on March
And,
6th the answer to that question.
and now another lob to you all.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Are
Yeah.
we are we gonna get some? Are we gonna get some no's?
Yeah. Hey, you never know over on X. They got
They're gonna-
I guess they got the pessimists. I
yeah,
don't
they're gonna
know.
be like, I don't think so.
But yeah, so having said that, to go along with that question, tune into next week's episode of the Hoth Hangout podcast, episode 72, where we will be talking all things Bad Batch season 3, episode 5, including our review, synopsis, and recap of the episode. Also, tune in early. What would that be? Early Thursday morning next week, or no,
Wednesday
excuse
morning.
me,
Wednesday morning.
early Wednesday morning. My days are so off now that we've recorded like 2 videos technically on the same day, but like 18 hours apart. Tune in early Wednesday morning for our reaction over on YouTube to episode 5. If you're interested in checking that out as well, that should be available early in the morning next week, usually by 8 a.m. Eastern time, somewhere in there. So And then, of course, next week, as we mentioned, episode 72 of the pod on the typical day available Thursday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern. Thank you all so much for listening to this episode of the Hoth Hangout podcast. As another reminder, you can check out the video version of the podcast over on YouTube, as well as all of our reactions to Star Wars shows, including our current reactions to The Bad Batch, which we're doing every week moving forward. Definitely check out our reaction most recently to episode 4, which we've discussed today. You can contact us via email at hothhangout@gmail.com. If you have any Star Wars questions related or otherwise, we'd love to showcase them here on the pod and discuss them as well. The Hoth Hangout podcast is findable anywhere you get your pods, including Spotify and Apple. And if you're listening on either of those platforms or any platform that allows you to leave a review, leave a 5-star review on the podcast. We would appreciate it very much. And it does also allow the pod to be more easily discovered by other folks who also love Star Wars as well. The Hoth Hangout channel is findable on Instagram, TikTok, and X at Hoth Hangout on each of those socials. And we were without our partner in crime, Gibbo, today, but we also want to thank Gibbo for producing today's the show, the video, the assets. We'll be excited to hear. We went under 1 hour for the recording of this episode. I think we're somewhere around like 51 minutes right now. So I missed my 50-minute mark, but maybe next week I'll have another opportunity to do it. So Joey, any last thoughts on this week's episode of the Bad Batch, or just anything Bad Batch related or Star Wars in general?
The crew is back together. That's what we wanted from this episode. And what's going to happen? I mean, we have quite a bit of the season left. So, kind of what to your point, like what's left for them? You know, so I'm excited to see what we've got left for Clone Force 99 if we get a return from Tech. Can't wait for Asajj and Fennec Shand. There's a lot to come here, and I have a feeling there's gonna drop a bomb somewhere between here and the end of the season. And I don't know when. I'm excited, and yeah, Bad Batch, here we are.
We got like at least 8 or 9 more weeks of it. I'm pumped that we get such an amazing show like this to watch each and every single week moving forward. Like you said, going to be a blast. Looking forward to it so very much. And lastly, shout out to George Lucas. Shout out to Dave Filoni. Shout out to Angela Bassett and bounty hunters and Rathkars who eat Imperials that we don't like. We appreciate you all for listening to this week's episode of the Hoth Hangout podcast. Tune in next week for our recap of episode 5 of Bad Batch season 3. Thanks so much again for listening. We appreciate each and every single one of you, and may the Force be with you.